Shocks. We can continue now with commentary on the first conscious shock, understanding that the whole of our work comes in at this point, addressing the shock at point 6 in the Enneagram from a different aspect. The realization of mechanicalness as one form of this shock has been discussed, where it was noted that we take ourselves for granted. We take the fact that we can speak or think, move, see, taste and hear, all for granted. We can explain nothing of all these phenomena and simply do not know. To really become aware of this gives a sense of wonder, of helplessness, which has close connection with one aspect of realizing everyone's mechanicalness. No one, however much they deny it, can say that they created themselves, and therefore know exactly how they work, what thought is, what feeling is, how it arises and so on. Stop, think for a moment and notice that we really do not know. We are given very complicated biomechanisms called bodies, and live in another very complicated mechanism called a world. When you realize all of this emotionally, you lift yourself off the ordinary level upon which we take everything, and this is a degree of the first conscious shock. By reflecting on the inexplicability of everything, including ourselves, we can reach a state of understanding quite different from our ordinary everyday understanding. The subject of the realization of mechanicalness has been discussed previously, mainly in the light of personal observation and seeing how it does, and not us. Recall the importance of self-observation with regard to the observation of personality. Every morning the same thoughts come to us, the same ways of taking things, the same feelings, the same troubles and the same solutions. This machine of personality to which each person is attached simply works mechanically. We put a token in the slot and everything goes as programmed, whatever has been hard-coded by, and for us, or what we've borrowed from others. We all know that it is not yourself that you have to observe, but your personality. Smith has to observe Smith, not themselves. It cannot be said often enough that self-observation as taught by this work is utterly different from what we ordinarily imagine as observing ourselves. This is one of the places where we fall asleep very easily to the meaning of the work, and where we constantly have to be roused. Smith comes to consult and talks about its difficulties in the work, telling me that it tries to observe itself but does not know what it means. Then it is asked, have you ever really tried to observe Smith? It is very surprised. Of course it is useless to observe yourself as if everything were you. We are attached to a complicated mechanism that creates the larger part of our story. However, we are not this machine, because there is something in us that can free itself. If this were not the case, then self-observation would be so much waste of our time. We view our connection with this machine, say over the course of a typical day. What has it been up to? What has it been saying? Where has it been? What did it want? Do we actually like it? Will we turn around and justify it? Are we more free from it if we do something with attention, with mindfulness, and with focus? Observe yourself in this way at this very moment. When we realize that the machine of personality moves us to and fro, taking charge of us at any given moment, we begin to catch a glimpses of what it means to realize our mechanicalness. And how may different personalities take charge in any given time frame? This is not schizophrenia, or bipolarism for that matter, simply the legion within, to which we are host. We can begin to understand why realization of this nature is defined as a form of self-remembering. See for ourselves that we cannot get beyond ourself, if we take all of it as ourself. How will we cross the stream with all of our belongings? How will we get out of prison if we insist upon taking everything along with us? You have to avoid yourself. We have to be patient with ourselves until all the noise, the hustle and the static that personality is making has quietened down, then we can at last be with ourselves. There is a phrase often used in this work, taken from other esoteric writings, to the effect that man is in prison. Gurdjieff would say that no one realizes their own situation. All of you, he said, are in prison, and all you can wish for, if you are sensible people, is to escape from entrapment. No one, however, can escape from prison without the help of those who have escaped before. Only they can teach us in what way escape becomes possible. At one time his favorite statement was that if a man in prison is to have at any time the chance of escape, then he must realize first of all that he is in prison. So long as he fails to realize this, so long as he thinks he is free, he has no chance whatsoever. If we do not realize our mechanicalness, we imagine that we are free. We imagine that we do everything from ourselves, through free will. This prison that Gurdjieff so often spoke about is first of all our personality. In the case of Smith, its prison is Smith, whom it does not observe at all, and who it regards as itself. What does it have to do? We all have to divide ourselves into I and Smith, which is Robert Pirsig's first cut. Separating the observer from the observed. It is with Smith all day, and so it has plenty of opportunity for observing, no excuse for saying that it can never get Smith to answer the phone. Because it is right there with Smith so much that it does not even notice, and it does not know that Smith makes it do everything. We should realize that one should say on meeting Smith, not merely, "How are you?" but should add, "But how is Smith?" And Smith should reply, "Oh, Smith is very well, thank you. But I on the other hand am in a rather poor state." It is impossible to help this individual to separate from Smith by trying to persuade them with reason. They may say that they do not believe that there is such a person as Smith and that it is simply a name, and so will argue with you, demanding this all be proven. Of course that is impossible, for it is only they who can liberate themselves. They have got to see for themselves what is meant by realizing one's mechanicalness. They have got to see that although they may imagine that they always have their own way, it is really Smith who has its own way. Then they have got to feel their own helplessness in the presence of Smith. Of course, this can only be a gradual, intermittent process, extending over many years of self-study. Once it has begun, however, once we actually perceive for a moment the presence of Smith, then our eventual liberation begins to become a possibility. Instead of opposing the idea of observation, we begin to use it intelligently, and then our life will become divided into two streams. One will be the life of Smith, and the other will be the history and reflections of the I, observing Smith. Then for a long time we will lead a double life, which can often be very painful. However, if we do not allow ourselves to become negative, to become filled with inner rage, then we can notice gradually that new meaning enters our understanding. Something begins to happen to us. This change, however subtle, is due to the shock being given at that point 6, through which new influences begin to reach an individual. There is a form of yoga, which is based upon reflection of oneself, who we are, and to what we can say, I. In this work we have to ask ourselves when we say, I, but which I? The realization that one uses the term, I, quite erroneously, begins one's practical work on oneself. It belongs to the shock at point 6 because it can increase consciousness, it increases our awareness of ourselves. It begins to give us a quite new relationship to the self. Say sometimes, to yourself in a moment of action, which I? Take for example a person who has begun to realize their mechanicalness. Mechanicalness means reacting as we always do to everything. Reflect upon this observation personally, see what it means to be mechanical. I recall the great joyful sense of liberation that I experienced when suddenly I realized what the work saying, "We must not react," might mean to me and to my life. Life can be transformed. I am no longer at the mercy of life and have found a way to deal with it. I need not react. No one and nothing can hurt or even touch me if I can but find the strength not to react. The solution to the difficulty lies always with me. I have the power, if I can only learn to use it, then that will render life harmless to me. Life is not my master. I can overcome the difficulties and the unhappiness of life, simply by becoming passive and by not reacting to everything.